Every night, our eyes close and the known world dissolves. Streets, names, deadlines, the faces we wear, all vanish into a vast, private theater of images. We call them dreams. But for Carl Gustav Jung, these were not just illusions of a resting mind. They were messages, ancient, sacred, and alive. In a world where Freud saw dreams as repressed desires, Jung saw something larger, something cosmic. He believed the dream was the psyche speaking in its own language, a symbolic tongue that humanity has spoken since before time. The dream, Jung once wrote, is a little hidden door to the innermost recesses of the soul. But what exactly was Jung trying to tell us about dreams, and why, 100 years later, do we still not understand it? To answer that, we must go back not just to Jung's life, but to the ancient story of how humanity began to listen to its own darkness. The Dreamer from Basel. Carl Jung was born in 1775 in Kiswil, Switzerland, the son of a pastor, raised among Bibles and silence. But from a young age, the boy was haunted by visions. Not nightmares, visions. He saw underground chambers glowing with light, giant figures with animal heads, and gods that felt both terrifying and divine. He didn't tell anyone. He simply wrote them down. Those early visions planted a seed, the sense that the human mind was not simply mechanical, not a box of logic and memory, but a living forest full of shadows and whispers. By the time Jung began his medical studies in Zurich, science was already trying to turn the mind into math. But Jung, restless, intuitive, and quietly rebellious, wanted to look inside. He joined the Bergholzli Psychiatric Clinic, where he worked with patients who saw visions, heard voices, and spoke to ghosts. And instead of dismissing them, he listened. These patients, Jung later said, were not insane. They were drowning in the same ocean we all swim in. Jung began collecting his patients' dreams, hundreds of them. He noticed something strange. Different people from different places with different lives dreamed of the same symbols: serpents, towers, mothers, oceans, falling, flying, rebirth. How could that be? From this mystery, Jung would build one of the most revolutionary ideas in modern thought: the collective unconscious, the notion that beneath every individual mind lies a shared ocean of imagery and memory, the psychic inheritance of humanity itself. Our dreams, he said, are not only personal, they are the speech of mankind's soul. To Jung, dreams were not random. They were a conversation between our conscious mind and this ancient collective source. When you dream, you are not alone. You are participating in something vast, a mythology still unfolding through you. Freud, the father, and the rift. But in the early 1900s, one man stood as the king of dreams: Sigmund Freud. For Freud, dreams were the disguised fulfillment of wish and desire, mostly sexual. They were about you, your repression, your childhood, your hidden lusts. Jung respected Freud deeply. He saw in him a pioneer, a man unafraid to descend into the human shadow. But Jung wanted to go further. He believed the psyche was not merely personal, but cosmic, not just about childhood, but about eternity. Their relationship began as mentor and student, and ended like a mythic tragedy. When Jung published his theories of archetypes and the collective unconscious, Freud saw it as a betrayal of science. Jung, in turn, saw Freud's reductionism as a betrayal of the soul. Their friendship shattered, and Jung was left alone, exiled from the psychoanalytic world he helped to build. "I had to find my own myth," Jung wrote later, "and live it fully." What followed was one of the strangest and most courageous experiments in psychology, Jung's descent into his own unconscious. For 6 years, he let his dreams, fantasies, and visions guide him. He spoke with inner figures, gods, demons, wise old men, radiant children. He recorded everything in what would later be called the Red Book. He was not writing theory, he was living it. "The dream," he wrote, "is the theater of the soul, where the ego meets what it does not yet know." Jung's dreams showed him that the unconscious was not a dark pit, but a mirror, reflecting what the conscious mind refuses to see, and that to truly grow, one must confront that reflection, the shadow. Facing the shadow. The shadow, Jung's word for the hidden, rejected parts of ourselves, the impulses we deny, the emotions we bury, the truths we hide from our own eyes. Jung believed that every dream reveals a piece of the shadow. When you run from something in a dream, it is not chasing you, it is calling to you. The monster is not your enemy, it is your mirror. For Jung, this confrontation was sacred. He called it individuation, the lifelong process of integrating the conscious and the unconscious into one whole being. Without it, we live half-lives, cut off from the wisdom that sleeps within us. Until you make the unconscious conscious, Jung warned, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. In Jung's world, dreams were not meaningless flickers. They were the psyche's way of healing itself, whispering what the waking mind could not bear to hear. But to understand how this mysterious process works, how a single dream can change the course of a life, we must enter deeper still, into the dream mechanics that Jung believed connected us not only to our own psyche, but to the divine. Morning in Zurich, 1920. Carl Jung sits at his desk, surrounded by hundreds of dream journals, his own and those of his patients. Each page is a window into the human mind, each image a fragment of truth trying to be seen. To Jung, dreams were not random, they were intelligent. They had purpose. They wanted something from us. The self that speaks in symbols. When Jung spoke of the self, he did not mean the ego, not the I that says, my name, my job, my story. He meant something deeper, the totality of who we are, known and unknown, seen and unseen. The self is not something we create. It is something that creates us. Dreams, Jung wrote, are the guiding messages of the self to the ego, the attempt of nature to restore psychic balance. Every dream, Jung said, is trying to heal the split between who we think we are and what we truly are. When the ego becomes too inflated, too certain, too rational, the dream will humble it. When the ego collapses into despair or chaos, the dream will guide it home. The psyche is not chaos. It is a living organism, constantly trying to balance itself, through symbols, through stories, through dreams. Decoding the dream language. Jung believed that dreams spoke in a language older than words, the language of symbols. But to understand this language, you could not use logic. You had to feel your way through it, like interpreting a poem written by your own soul. When a woman dreamed of a storm, Jung did not ask her, "What does it mean literally?" He asked, "Where in your life are you being shaken by something larger than yourself?" When a man dreamed of a dying animal, Jung did not diagnose. He asked, "What instinct in you is fading? What wildness have you forgotten?" Jung's method was revolutionary. He never told a patient what their dream meant. He helped them enter the dream, to speak with its figures, to feel its moods, to let the image reveal itself. The dream, he said, is its own interpretation. The myth within. As Jung collected dreams, a strange pattern emerged. The same symbols appeared across centuries and continents: dragons, wise old men, the divine child, the flood, the mother. It was as if every dreamer was secretly retelling the same story, humanity's oldest myth. From this discovery, Jung developed his theory of archetypes, universal patterns of the psyche. They were not invented by culture. They were the blueprint beneath culture. The hero, the shadow, the mother, the trickster, the rebirth, all were expressions of the same psychic structures within us. When we dream of fighting monsters, we are enacting the archetype of the hero. When we dream of giving birth or dying, we are touching the mystery of transformation. Dreams, Jung said, are the mythology of the individual, personal myths in conversation with universal ones. The healing power of the dream. In therapy, Jung noticed something extraordinary. When patients took their dreams seriously, when they stopped analyzing and started listening, something in them began to heal. One woman, tormented by depression, dreamed of a small flame in a dark cave. Jung told her not to analyze it, but to tend to it, to imagine keeping that flame alive each morning. Weeks later, her depression began to lift. For Jung, this was proof. The psyche knows what it needs. The dream gives us the medicine, if we can recognize it. The dream, he wrote, is the natural expression of the inner condition of the soul. It compensates what the conscious mind ignores. If the mind is too proud, the dream will humble it. If it is too fearful, the dream will empower it. The dream is the whisper of balance, the silent hand of nature restoring order within.
We live in an age Jung could only imagine, an age of algorithms, endless screens, and restless minds. We have conquered distance, invented artificial intelligence, and filled every waking moment with noise. But in our quietest hours, when the phone is off and the world is still, something ancient still stirs within us. We still dream. The forgotten language. Jung believed that dreams were the psyche's oldest language, a way of keeping the human soul connected to its own center. But today, most of us no longer speak that language. We treat dreams as curiosities, flickering shadows of no consequence. Yet every night as we fall asleep, our mind descends into the same depths Jung once mapped, the collective unconscious, that vast ocean of symbols connecting all of humanity. Jung warned that when a civilization loses contact with its inner world, it begins to fracture. The outer world becomes a mirror of the chaos within. The psychological rule, he wrote, says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside, as fate. In other words, what we refuse to face in our dreams, we are forced to face in the world. The split world. The 21st century is the perfect experiment of that idea. We have more data, more connection, more knowledge, and yet more loneliness, more anxiety, more despair. Jung would say this is not a technological problem, but a spiritual one. We are trying to build machines that do what the soul once did. Remember, connect, imagine, and heal. But no code can dream for us. The pendulum of the mind, Jung wrote, swings between sense and nonsense, not between right and wrong. Meaning is not found in logic alone. It grows in the soil of images, stories, and symbols, in the dark, irrational roots of the dream. Dreams as the bridge to wholeness. For Jung, the purpose of dreaming was not escape, but integration. In the dream, we meet our disowned parts, the shadow, the wounded child, the lost love, the divine image. Each figure we encounter is a reflection of something within us. To reject them is to reject ourselves. But if we dare to listen, to speak with the figures, to feel the emotions they bring, we begin to heal the split between who we are and who we might become. Jung called this individuation, the journey toward wholeness. A journey he believed that never truly ends, because the psyche, like the universe, is always in motion. The vision that haunted him. In 1944, Jung suffered a heart attack. For weeks, he hovered between life and death. During that time, he had a series of visions, luminous, vast, impossible to describe. He saw the earth from space, radiant and fragile. He entered a great stone temple, where a being of light awaited him, serene, eternal, beyond all comprehension. Everything around me seemed to consist of pure light, Jung later wrote. There was no time, no space, only eternity. I felt I was about to be united with all things. But just as he was about to step through, he was pulled back to his body, his bed, his pain. He lived for 17 more years, never quite the same. He said that after that vision, death no longer frightened him. What frightened him was the blindness of modern man, a humanity cut off from its own soul. Dreams as the soul's compass. For Jung, dreams were not just psychological curiosities. They were moral instruments. They revealed imbalance. They called for transformation. They pointed the way toward meaning. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. To look inside is to take responsibility, to see the wars within us so that we do not create them outside us. He believed that world peace would never be achieved by politics alone, but by the healing of the individual psyche. The salvation of the world, he wrote, depends on the salvation of the soul of man. The cost of ignoring the dream. In today's world, we treat sleep as an inconvenience. We light up the night, drown silence with screens, and fill the dark with distraction. But Jung warned that what we refuse to face inwardly will return in disguise. The nightmares we dismiss often contain the wisdom we most need. The dream, he said, is the voice of the unknown. When ignored, that voice becomes louder, more chaotic, more desperate, until it breaks through as anxiety, depression, or destruction. Our civilization dreams too,